You are 23 years old. You just got your first real paycheck, and you are about to make a decision so boring, so forgettable, that you won't even remember making it by the time you turn 30. But the real answer is far stranger. That one boring decision is going to matter more than almost anything else you do in your 20s. Hi, I'm Dave. I make videos about money, psychology, and the weird hidden forces that shape how we live. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just someone who got obsessed with why some people's lives quietly transform over a decade, while other people's stay exactly the same. Here's the moment. You open your first paycheck. There's a form sitting in your inbox, something about a retirement account. Maybe it says 401k, maybe it says pension. You don't read it. Why would you? Retirement is 40 years away. You're 23. You have rent to pay, friends to see, a life to build. So you close the tab. So you tell yourself you'll deal with it later. That single click, or that single skipped click, is the decision this video is about. Not because retirement accounts are exciting. They're not. This isn't a story about a clever stock pick or a lucky crypto bet. It's a story about compounding. And compounding is one of the strangest forces in human experience because it feels like nothing is happening right up until everything happens at once. Let's slow down and look at what compounding actually is. Albert Bartlett, a physicist who spent decades studying exponential growth, used to tell his students that the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. He wasn't talking about money specifically. He was talking about anything that grows on itself. Bacteria in a dish, interest in an account, habits in a life. Here's why it fools us. For the first several years, exponential growth looks almost identical to a flat line. $10,000 sitting in an account growing at 7% a year becomes about $10,700 after year one. That's it. That's the whole show. Boring, forgettable, nothing to post about. But rewind the clock, extend it forward. By year 20, that same $10,000 has nearly quadrupled. Not because anything changed, not because the market did anything unusual, just because time did what time does, quietly in the background while you were living your actual life. This is where the age 23 versus age 33 gap becomes almost unfair. Economists Richard Thaler and Shlomo Ben-Artzi ran a landmark study in the early 2000s testing why so few people saved for retirement, even when they knew logically that they should. They found something surprising. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't ignorance. It was a very human bias toward the present, a discomfort with giving up something today for a benefit so far in the future it barely feels real. Their solution became known as Save More Tomorrow, a program that automatically increased people's savings rate over time so the decision was made once, quietly, and never had to be made again. Notice what's happening there. The problem was never math. You already know $10 saved today is worth more than $10 saved in a decade. The problem is your brain doesn't feel the 10 years. It only feels today. So what happens if you start at 23 instead of 33? Someone who invests $200 a month starting at 23 at a historical average return will have contributed less money out of pocket by the time they retire than someone who starts at 33 and tries to catch up by investing more each month. Less money in, more money out. That's not a hack. That's not a secret loophole. That's just what an extra 10 years of compounding does when you give it room to work. 10 years sounds like nothing, but in exponential terms, 10 years near the beginning of the curve is worth more than 20 years near the end of it. That's the part almost nobody explains clearly, and it's the part that makes this single decision so disproportionately powerful. Here's the twist, though. This isn't really a story about money. It's a story about identity. Psychologist Hal Hirschfeld ran a study using age-progressed digital images, showing young adults a rendering of their own future older selves. People who saw their future face, rather than just imagining it abstractly, were significantly more willing to allocate money toward long-term savings. Why? Because your brain, when left untrained, treats your future self almost like a stranger. Someone else's problem, someone you don't owe anything to. That's the real reason the paycheck decision gets ignored at 23. It's not laziness, it's not stupidity, It's that your future self doesn't feel real yet. 33 feels far away. 65 feels like science fiction. But here's the mirror. The version of you at 33 who benefits from that decision, they don't remember the form. They don't remember the click. They just wake up one day and notice their account has a number in it that seems disconnected from the effort they put in. It feels almost like luck. It isn't luck. It's 10 extra years of a curve doing what curves do. Think about anything else that compounds the same way. A habit of reading 20 pages a night, a habit of showing up to the gym 3 times a week, a single boring skill practiced quietly for a decade. None of it feels significant in the moment. All of it becomes enormous in hindsight. Wendy Wood, a researcher who has spent much of her career studying habits, found that roughly 40% of what people do every day isn't really decided at all. It's automatic. It runs on autopilot, shaped by whatever pattern got set early and never got questioned. That paycheck form, the one you ignore at 23, either becomes part of your autopilot or it never does. And which one happens is often decided in a single afternoon you'll forget by next week. So, here's the actual advice. The boring, unglamorous advice this whole video has been circling. It's not about picking the right investment. It's not about timing the market. It's about removing the decision entirely. Automate it once. Let the exponential curve do the part that requires no talent, no luck, and no attention. The version of you at 33 isn't going to thank you out loud. They're not going to remember to. They're just going to live a slightly different life than the one where that form got closed and forgotten. You are 23 years old. You just got your first real paycheck. There's a boring form sitting in your inbox. It doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like the beginning of anything. But the real answer is far stranger than it looks. That one forgettable click is quietly deciding who you'll be at 33, long before you ever think to ask.